on the newsChannel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight talking about tough topic, an important topic, one that we have talked about before and I'm sure we will talk about again, but we're talking about guns in the wake of these horrible mass shootings over the weekend. We are talking about red flag laws. Would they make a difference? We don't have them now in Tennessee. We'll explain what they are. Would they make a difference when it comes to these mass shootings? Some states have passed these laws. Tennessee has not. And so we're going to explain that. Monday night, we had people from Moms Demand Action. They support stricter gun control. Tonight we have John Harris, Executive Director of Tennessee Firearms Association. John, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're not for more gun control. That would be a fair statement.
No, that's generally true. Not for it.
In the wake, and I want to talk about red flag laws, but just in the wake of these shootings, again, people are saying, what can we do? This is out of control. What do you think we can do, should do? You know, what do we do?
Well, I've been coming on Channel 5 for years now, and I very much appreciate that. And one thing we see is, and have seen over the last couple of decades, is that these shootings recur. And the golden goose that everybody's searching for is, what predictive tool do we have or can we develop to stop the next one before it happens? And I don't think that tool exists right now. It's certainly not red flag laws. They're a placebo that's being put out largely by organizations that have as their real mission gun control. So we're interested in finding a solution to the problem. We don't think this is it.
And then I'm going to talk about red flag laws after this. So other countries, again, you've seen those stats and people were tweeting and everybody just gets so on edge and is so emotional and so upset. And so I want to ask you this, then we're going to go to gun flag law. Other countries, zero mass shootings, 1 mass shooting. We have so many. Why? What is wrong with us, and why does this keep happening, and can we stop it?
Well, that's a great question, and I think that's a question that really needs to be honestly examined. And I was listening on the radio as I drove over this afternoon to do the show, and a local radio host who's talk radio, you probably know who it is because there's only so many on this time of day, was talking about a study and a report that he has seen and he's published on his website, which looks at this data about mass public shootings from a unique perspective, and the examination is, it looks back at this U.S. Supreme Court decision that happened about 40 years ago that changed how government is allowed to deal with people with mental health. And what he was saying on the radio as I was driving in is, if you look at that point in time when the law changed about public government interference on mental health issues, before that time there was, like, you could count them on one hand the number of mass public shootings that involved mental health in the 50 years before that point in time. And since that point in time, when government has pulled back from interfering and taking a proactive approach toward mental health, the guys on the street, for example, we've had like 120 shootings. Now, you want to identify the problem, that's credible data that says there's the problem. Government isn't doing what maybe it can or should do. Once someone is identified as having a mental health problem, if it's severe enough that they create a risk to themselves or others, to deal with that person, to get them off the streets, to give them help, give them treatment, and help them have a productive life, or if that is not achievable, to limit their access to the public.
So red flag laws kind of go into that. I'm going to let you explain what a red flag law is. Other states, again, have passed this kind of thing. Tennessee is not. What is a red flag law? Define that.
The concept of a red flag law, that's sort of the common name for what's called extreme risk protection orders. is the other terminology. And essentially it's a concept that says government needs to keep track of data on every individual, like the Parkland shooter, that might indicate that the person has violent tendencies, mental health problems, emotional problems, or is just too frequently running into the cops for some reason. But the concept is we're going to keep track of all that data, and then we're going to arbitrarily define that certain of those data points are predictors for the potential that that person might commit a crime in the future. And what a red flag law is designed to do is to go in and take that person's firearms away from them before they ever commit that crime or attempt to commit that crime.
So, all right, some things you said would raise red flags with conservatives when you talk about the government doing this. Mm-hmm. What if it is a teacher and they're concerned about, a senior, some sort of student in their classroom, and they say, I think that person may have a mental issue, and there's a red flag initiated that way.
Right.
I mean, I guess, is there a way, what I heard you say is that the government monitors us, which that concerns people.
That's the proposal.
So that worries people a little
Yes.
bit. The government monitors us. And then you said arbitrarily, that worries people. But is there a way that it could be done where it would make some sense to you? You just said that mental illness is a huge problem. Is there a way to identify some of these people who are mentally ill and say, hey, no gun?
Well, I don't think it's a no-gun issue. For example, we have in Tennessee, and we have had it a long time, and other states have it, laws which allow government to identify an individual based upon medical observation as an extreme risk to themselves or other people, and the government can then intervene. It's called an involuntary committal. No criminal act at all, but just based upon the mental health assessment, can intervene, put that person forcibly in a mental health facility, diagnose and treat them for I think up to 2 weeks in Tennessee, and then have a hearing on whether or not they'll be let out or they got to continue undergoing treatment. So if someone is an extreme risk, okay, let's use extreme risk, orders, then they're going to probably fit under the existing statutory framework. If they're a big enough risk, then what I think government ought to be doing is taking that person and putting them in a safe environment, not only for themselves, but to protect the public from them. Because there has to be a medical determination that they're an imminent risk of threat or serious bodily injury to themselves or a third person. And so if you just take the guns, they still got knives. They could drive a car over people. They could drive a car into a building. They could scooter them to death in downtown Nashville. They got lots of other weapons at their disposal. So just taking the gun away is the way people who want to take guns away broadly think. But the real problem is this person is such a risk that they don't need to be, at that point in time, in society in general.
So you would you support, you're talking about greater, it's one thing to take someone's guns away, it's another thing to take their freedom away.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like removing them from society?
But keep in mind that the Supreme Court has said that the possession of firearms is a fundamental protected right, as much as any other right you've got, including your liberty. And so you're taking away a constitutionally protected right if you just go grab the gun. Now the gun control people don't even view it as a protected right, so that doesn't bother them. But it bothered Scalia when he wrote the opinion, so he said it was. But the issue comes back to is in these extreme risk protection orders, if that's what we're talking about, an extreme risk that's imminent, predictive behavior, then isn't the better thing to do with due process controls, because you got to have 2 doctors sign off on it, you've got to have a judge review it to make sure all the statutory elements are there, and then they can be held in a health care. They're not locked up in a jail. They're held at Tennessee Mental Health or at Vanderbilt or at one of the other hospitals. They can be held for 2 weeks where they're observed, assessed, and a determination is made as are they really a threat to themselves. That, to me, is really more likely to prevent a mass shooting if they're a real threat than taking away their gun but letting them have access to diesel fuel and knives and chainsaws and anything else they want.
So as I look over the information that I have here, it says there are 17 states that have now approved some version of a red flag law, including Florida, New York, Connecticut, Illinois, Indiana, and California. This says that I have New York is one of the most recent.
Right.
It allows teachers as well as family members to obtain, or as well as family members to petition the courts for protective orders.
Correct.
All right. So I don't know if that's the government as you described it. How about teachers and family members? They see something that concerns them. They can petition the court, say, this person is not stable. Let's take his guns away.
Well, yeah, but what you run into with that theory, that's the Bloomberg model, okay, is just like what we see in domestic cases where people going through a divorce start taking out orders of protection as leverage, okay? Connecticut was one you mentioned. Connecticut's had it the longest. I think they put theirs on the books in 1999. And in Connecticut, the process is family members, teachers, whoever, can call in or communicate with the police and say, I think John is a risk, and they can report it and initiate the process. But what Connecticut requires is 2 separate law enforcement officers have to go out and investigate that claim. The police officers are the ones who then have to say, yeah, this is a legitimate, and the police officers are the ones who then have to take the matter to the court. And it's the police officer's petition and affidavit based upon the citizen's complaint, just like a theft here, that triggers the process. But even with that heightened level of scrutiny, what we see now with almost 20 years of data coming out of Connecticut is once the court has the second hearing, and in the second hearing in Connecticut is where John, or the person being accused, gets to present their side of the story, 32% of those initial orders are dismissed because they shouldn't have been granted in the first place. So even with a higher standard of scrutiny, a third of them should have never been issued. Mm-hmm. And so this bit about just letting a teacher or angry ex-boyfriend or angry ex-girlfriend go do it, no, that's way too low a threshold to have any kind of due process protections.
Well, that kind of sets the table. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fascinating discussion, and I think we're going to hear more about it because I feel like, you know, there are these shootings over and over again, and people do want to do something, and everybody says, well, the people are mentally ill, and they are. Anybody who would do that's obviously mentally ill. You know, what can we do? What do we do? So what do you think? You've kind of heard the setup here. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. John Harris, Tennessee Firearms Association. Give us a call. Tell us your thought. We'll be back right after this.